Hey, welcome to the Joyful Rebels podcast. How was your week? Did you have any wins? Always reach out to us. You can leave messages on social media. You can email us. We love the feedback and we love to hear from you. I've got another question. Do you meditate? Have you
Mm.
tried and maybe failed? Have you tried the videos, all the videos that are out there, all the apps? Have you tried just sitting in silence? If you have a busy mind, slowing down at times can feel almost impossible or unattainable. But the good news is it is possible and it gets way easier with practice. Mindfulness, that word you've heard us use a bunch of time, that's when you bring your attention to the here and the now. And one way we can do that is through meditation. And within meditation, there's a bunch of different tools that you can have using your breath as an anchor or counting or focusing on gratitude. There's also ways to practice mindfulness outside of meditation. Maybe you're focusing on your senses, even when you're doing things like brushing your teeth or eating. Mindfulness is important. That's why I'm talking about it. It can reduce your stress, improve your emotional regulation, where you have control over your emotions, they're not controlling you.
Mhm.
It can lower your anxiety. It can lower your blood pressure. It can improve your sleep. All these things. Why am I talking about them? We've got a new resource for you. And total honesty here, it's actually existed, but it's been reformatted and it's way better now. It's called Create Your Calm, a 21-day beginner's guide to mindfulness and meditation. It's 21 days of unique prompts and activities that take 2 to 5 minutes a day. That's it. You're building your mindfulness toolbox here. Each exercise is different and you're building consistency and momentum. So, mom, we talk about that all the time, but
Yep.
you're not going to have that forever motivation. Don't even be looking for that. That's not real. You need consistency, and that helps you build that momentum. There's also space for notes in here. So you don't even need to, use one of your other journals or try to write it in your wins journal. You can have it all in one space. And it's up on Amazon. So it's easy to get to. So we've got that at thejoyfulrebels.com. You can find a link for that. And we're just very proud and happy with this. And meditation is something that is so important. Mom, I know that you recently have added meditation into some of the classes that you teach. Can
Mhm.
you talk to us a little bit about why you think it's so important?
Well, it's awesome, and I love that it is interwoven in how we create resources, how we deal with the outside world, because we're dealing with the inside world first, and that really needs to happen. That is part of our core values, and we see it in play in our own lives and how we move forward with pretty much everything Joyful Rebels. As I'm back teaching in person again, have a really great class that is a 60-minute yoga flow class, and then it has a 15-minute meditation right after it. So just as a baseline, the poses in yoga were designed to have young Indian men move and physically get out some of their energy so that they could sit and meditate and begin to make sense of their world. Because when we're distracted, we are very external. And to get an idea of what's happening internal, you have to just internally, you have to pay attention to it. And it's just a challenge in Western culture. So I love that this is bundled together. And what I'm seeing is that people do get a chance to flow, breathe, move, and exert energy. And then, like right after we finish, there's no gap. All of a sudden, we're seated and we're in Anapana meditation. And here's what I'm noticing. It's challenging, but there is a desire from people to want to learn how to meditate. And having a 15-minute in-person one that's already tacked on to something that they're already doing seems like a low barrier to entry. And so that's it, like Claire, the Create Your Calm, 3 to 5 minutes a day, low barrier to entry. You're going to do little things more consistently and start building your momentum. So it all goes along with that. I'm also seeing that the learning curve is quick, so that you can be somebody that would identify with being, I get distracted, I can't quiet my mind. I'm like, well, nobody can. I mean, it's hard. That is the challenge. It's not to eliminate the thoughts, it's to live with them, to create more of a gap in between all of the thoughts so that we can respond more than react to things. And when that space opens up a little bit through practice and through this really intentional breathing and being seated and going internal, it's in short periods of time that it compounds really quickly. So even over the last 3 weeks that I've been teaching this live, people are making it through. They sit longer, they're able to do it. And so I'm encouraged. we are encouraged to continue to want that to be a tool that we can offer you with a very low barrier to entry so that you start incorporating it into your life. It's not something you want to do like when everything else in your life is going well or when you get to a certain point. You start it now. You can start it today. There's no pre-work that needs to happen. And if we are going to say that, then we need to do it. And so we're doing it too. So the bottom line is that I'm very encouraged. Very low barrier to entry. I think everybody needs the moments to be quiet and with themselves and not be so bombarded with all of the stimulation that comes from living in the world that we live in today. Our nervous systems need a break. Our hearts and our minds need to be connected with and given a chance just to be able to do that. And so I love having these resources. I love doing it in person, but this Create Your Calm, you guys, again, I get a chance to brag. I'm going to take 20 seconds here and do that. This is bomb. I mean, this is a very user-friendly uh, resource that it gains so much traction so quickly, it almost feels too good to be true. And I understand the skepticism when you're like, yeah, okay, no, this is it. This is the real deal. We've spent a lot of time collectively in this space. And what I love about how Claire's brain and heart and mind function together is that she has a great intention, but she knows how to deliver it objectively and clearly and in a way that doesn't feel demanding of your time. That's a really unique combination. So thank you, Claire. That is a big
Thank
deal in
you.
the world today. You're welcome. I'm glad you heard that because I really do mean that. And so lastly on this is what we're trying to do is to get these resources into your hands and make them low barrier for your time and energy, as well as like your money. Like this could be a very much more expensive thing. We just want you to do it. We want you to be a part of it because we want you to feel better. So thanks for bringing up Create Your Calm. There may be something in the future where we all gather with that. I don't know. We'll plant a little seed on that. But I think it's time that we do some digital things with us in the group. More about that later, but know that that resource is available. I'm glad it's on Amazon as well. So there's more and more daily that we're coming out with here. So it feels like a really exciting, prolific time. Thanks for being with us. So
Yeah.
we're in all of it. We've got all the things happening. We are reflecting today on role models, and I've had such a great time thinking about it and making some huge connections this week. But I'm going to circle back and go, Claire, what do you feel? What were some of your reflections on role models? Were there any challenges? Were there any wins? How did it look in your world?
Yeah, and again, thank you for all those kind words. We do really put our heart into this stuff, and we want to take you all along with us. So, and I will also echo that more to come, surprising things in the future that we are very excited about. Can't wait to tell everyone. But role models. So some topics, you've heard me say are ones where I feel like I'm winning and I've like mastered this, if that's a thing, and I want to share. And some are more, no, this is something I'm working on now. And so as I reflected this past week on role models, I really had to think pretty deeply, like surface level. It wasn't just this, oh yeah, this is something that's, I totally have mastered. So role models, mom, I would say you are definitely up there as a number one. And people get to hear that if you're listening on the podcast. I will ask, like, what is your perspective on this thing that we're talking about? If it is especially a topic where I'm like not feeling great about it, but I know you have more experience on it, I get to hear that from you. And so that's something that I appreciate. Definitely
Hmm.
do not take for granted. Then as I try to move, the spotlight around and look, where else are my role models? Uh, I don't want to say I was coming up short, but I was really, what kept coming to mind were more people that are in my vicinity who I'm like, we said last week, kind of that anti-hero. Like I see either I don't like the path that they were on or I don't like how they got there. And so again, this can be good information. And I don't want to say that it's a bad thing, but maybe you're like me where when you're thinking about it, you're like, well, I'm kind of just have a lot of examples of things where I not totally vibing with that, or I know I don't want that. I know I don't want that. So then I was really reflecting back on what we talked about last week, which the first one is if you're going to look for a role model, you have to be clear on you. You have to look inward. So, and I do feel like I've been doing this work for a while now, clear on what my goals are, clear on my values. So I felt pretty good on the first step. That second step was looking outward then. So who do you have around you? And then asking those questions, right? You're vetting, okay, uh, what are their priorities? How do they handle their struggles and their wins? These are all things that are important. And so I was at that point where I was looking, at potential people in my life. And I guess the next step then was actually having a conversation with someone. And I feel like for me, that we didn't really address that last week. And we said how we find our role models, but then it was, what do we do when we want to start maybe a mentor style of relationship? And mom, again, role model, here we go. I know that you have a lot more experience with being in that mentor role. And so I guess if someone who is listening, if you're like me and you're like, okay, I want more role models, maybe I've even identified someone who can be like, what's next? Like, what can I do to
Hmm.
move that forward?
That's a great question, and it's good for me to be able to um, wrap language around it, because some of it just unfolds organically. So that could happen. So I don't want to miss it. And when I sit and think about it a little bit, it falls into two camps for me for role models. Number one, I think there's um, situational ones where a role model is helpful, and there's also life transition ones. So so I'm very flexible with who can fall into a role model category. So I don't want us to miss that, where we might have an idea of what it looks like, but don't miss who's around you. So that's a key point too, is like, who is in your immediate world? Who is in your immediate world that you feel like you can learn something from? And those are the words I say to myself, because I don't need them to be all encompassing. I don't need them to show me exactly the path of what it could look like, because that's not realistic. I need them to show me a perspective. And sometimes when I'll hear feedback or a perspective from someone, I don't particularly like it because it's different from my own. I mean, isn't that a weird slap? Right? Like, here I want the hear something different. And then I'm like, but it challenges me and it makes me uncomfortable. So I have to be okay with being uncomfortable, because I do wind up learning something. So I want to look at the people around me. I like maybe even extended family, somebody that you don't have a lot of contact with. That could be somebody that could be interesting, could be somebody further down the path professionally or personally. You know what's really interesting that I'm learning? The ones in my life right now, I've got two, they're male and they're younger. Like, I didn't seek them out either. So Claire, you talked about maybe like sometimes you'll have an actual conversation, and that has happened to me. We're like, will you be my mentor? Can we have this conversation with that in mind? Great, that'll happen some of the time. But I also want us to understand that sometimes mentors don't come with a name tag, that you will organically have relationship with somebody and you will start learning things. So once your awareness light is on, you're like, wait a minute, this could be a potential mentor. So I think that's really interesting too, that it can grow out of something that's just happening around you. Claire, I know you said that there are people in your community that you're looking at that can be potential role models. Somebody that lives nearby or somebody that you're seeing. Like, those are things that do have value. So I don't want to miss those. We'll come back to that in a second. But if you're looking at somebody who's in your world, you're looking in unexpected places, that's one way to find somebody. But then what happens if you're on the other end of it? Like, you happen to be the one that somebody's looking at. I have one bit of feedback or information that I hope helps somebody, because I've made mistakes all over the place in this particular section we're talking about. If I feel like I'm in a mentor relationship and feel like I have something to offer, it's starting to build, it's becoming a thing. Like, we're seeing that this is a relationship, whether it's personal or professional. And I'll talk even professional right now. I have made the mistake of being somebody who's just like, I'll just give you everything I know, like pontificating. I'm like, let me just tell you about this and this. And I'm like, what really is helpful to both parties is if I listen for the specific questions. What does that person really want to know? And then address that. So it's made me a better listener, because I have a lot of stuff I could share with people, but maybe that they don't care about that. And it's not about me talking. It's not, I don't derive joy out of just hearing my voice. Some people do. I feel like some people just love that. I'm like, nope. If I feel like I have something of service that I can offer that will help somebody along their path, then I want to share that. But other than that, I can keep it to myself. So it's helped me with my listening and my discernment. So I'm just going to try to answer the questions as best as I can. I don't mean like yes, no, but if it's going to be a longer term mentor role model situation, then I'm going to give it some oxygen and let it play out. Because I know if I get a ton of information at one point, I can only process so much. That's just my brain only handles so much.
Mm.
So I think I'm going to do that with other people too. So it's a work in progress. And it's a responsibility that I hold very dear to my heart so that my actions match my words, that I um, present the information in a way that the other person can see themselves in it, and that there's this natural ease in the conversation. And then lastly, I am not a role model to a bunch of people, like specifically. I don't take on that role a lot. I can do it a little bit here and there. I feel like but to really stand in that space with somebody, like, outside of like you, Claire, and, and all the kids, I don't want to stand in that because I believe that we get bits and pieces from lots of different people.
Mm.
So I know you've said that as you're looking and you're, you do a lot of different things. You've got projects that are happening, but you also have little kids at home. You've seen the people around your area in your proximity. And have you not gotten creative with just finding bits and pieces you could take, like from your neighbors or from people that you see in your, friend group? I mean, isn't there some people that are right there in front of you?
As you're saying it, it really does open my eyes because for some reason I just had this vision that this, like, again, all encompassing role model, and I'm going to learn everything for them. And yeah, it's kind of that all or nothing, line of thinking. Like, I need to get everything from someone or there's no value, which is, a horrible thing to say and not true. But now that you're saying that, the fact that it can be situational, like, that makes a lot of sense for me because I have friends that are working on projects that are similar to the things that I'm interested in, and I get motivation from them. And when they're doing well, oh, how'd you do that? So yes, that is happening for me. And even when I'm out in my neighborhood, like you mentioned, my community, like, I live by a lot of elderly people, but they are always outside walking, gardening. And I will say, so my garden is really kicking right now. It's going awesome. Like, that is something I'm passionate about, but also even the walking. And I will just admire, like, this is so amazing. Even I'm thinking now, my grandpa who just passed away recently, the last time I went and took my kids to visit, he had a little under the desk type of little cycle, what's the word I'm looking for, an exercise bike, that little
Yeah.
exercise bike thing. And he was like, yeah, I'm doing this all the time. He had that stationary bike as well. He's like, I'm still moving. And I mean, 89 years old and still moving. And I think maybe without, you said mentors don't have name tags. And isn't that what it is? The label wasn't there, but the lesson was there. Oh, I already know that movement is important. Like, this is so important. Look at being able to move at an older age. This is so important to me. Like, as I'm getting older, thinking to the future. And, aging is a whole other topic, I think, but I'm excited about aging. I am like, let's go. What can I do to, the most benefit for older Claire? So that's really helpful for me. And if you're listening, maybe that was a helpful tidbit for you too, that maybe role model doesn't have to be this formal title. Here, I'm thinking I'm going to walk up to someone with some, like, contract, like, will you sign this role model paper?
In
Like,
blood
forever role
forever.
model. But no, it can be in a situation or in a certain transition, and that just makes so much sense. So I really appreciate you putting some clarity um, around that. And so again, maybe if that was you, maybe just, again, hashtag mentors don't come with a name tag, and maybe your awareness light is on. Um, I just want to add here right before we end this podcast, that talking about, if you are in a mentor role, that you also get to have some choice in who you get to mentor, right? that
Mhm.
that that is energy and a special relationship. So if you are going to be in that position, to be intentional about it. I love how you said you listen for specific questions, and it's helped to make you a better listener. So I think if you're someone listening who is in a mentor role as well, that's some really great advice, that you don't need to give everything you know all at once. Hopefully there'll be future conversations where you can let a little bit go
Yeah.
every time. Um, Mom, any other closing thoughts here before we finish up?
Well, again, I've learned through this process too. I think some of it was happening in an underlying way. This is my perspective of it, but it feels so much more accessible. And
Mm,
if I take a look back, I'm like, okay, yeah, have had role models that have woven in and out, have served a purpose. It's like having friends. You don't have to have one friend that does everything for you. You got a friend you laugh with. You got another friend that's really good at problem solving with you. Sometimes you're lucky enough to have a friend that's got all of it, but that's not the norm, I don't think. I think you've got several that serve different functions, and role models are the same way. But it really comes back to I'm going to live it first and then just share it to show one way that it could look. And if I stay in that heart space, then that is just providing more, spurring on more creativity for how things can look. Because we are living in the world right now in ways, and even like the next few weeks, I could be doing something that I just don't know what it looks like right now. Like I like to be spurred in my creativity. Otherwise, I just go from what I know, and I don't feel like I'm elevating the conversation, which elevates my life. And then we can share it, because I do think that we've got capacity as a whole humanity, as a whole human race. We can do better in a way that feels better. And if we're just plugged in and we share what we know with other people, they don't have to listen. I'm not attached to what their outcome is. They get to do with it what they want. So that connectedness directly relates to a level of happiness. We've talked about the research on that. So that's one way to be connected in a way that feels like it's service oriented, it's putting good out in the world, and it's maybe helping somebody else, maybe. And I get a chance to get clarity because I'm saying it out loud.
mm,
So enter into these relationships in a way that you're bringing your highest self. That doesn't mean you won't have issues, but that you're working on yourself. You're continuing to just look and trying to do the best that you can. It's an ongoing process. Clarity, your earlier point, you've been living in the space. It's not going to be a one and done. Then you'll get into another chapter and new things will be revealed. So, we trust that you're doing the work and just being curious about how it looks. And that really is like half the battle. Just be curious, be open, be with people, have their best interest at heart as you go. And I think that we're going to just take everybody with us and create a little bit more ease. And that really makes me feel good about just being on the planet, because I think we're doing better than the people before us who did better than the people than before then. So it's all a continuation of it. And I don't want the time to last. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys, so I've got my Joyful Rebel shirt on. Okay. So I've got it, and I'm kind of short, so I'm kind of down. You didn't see it in the frame, but I've got this really great white little tank on. So I love that we've got some merch. I'm gonna close it up here. Claire, I don't know if you've got any final things to say, but there's some really fun stuff on the joyfulrebels.com. And we're just this group of people that think a little bit outside the box to try
mm.
to invest internally so that we can send it out to everybody and bring everybody with us.
Yes. And if you've got any feedback, if you've got your perspective or your take on a role model or how they've showed up in your life, engage, share with us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, Rebels.